On February 10th, 2015, the first MP from the second set of Panini's Dragon Ball Z card game, titled Heroes and Villains, was previewed. Ten Shinhan offered a gambler's playstyle, centered around using his own life deck as a resource, in exchange for anger and card advantage. I was quick to test him with proxies, choosing to pair him with the Red and Rage Mastery, his primary game loop centering around tutoring his name card, Ten Shinhan's preparation to his hand, and proceeding to skyrocket in anger while keeping his opponent down. As his life deck transferred to the discard pile, Ten Shinhan would look to rejuvenate key non-styled cards with his level 2 whenever you dealt critical damage, something that Red was really pushing for. His name card, Ten Shinhan's Draining Blast, also allowed you to search for key, banished, and discarded non-styled cards to rejuvenate, setting up some interesting combos with cards like Red Left Bolt. If you wanted to go for MPPV, you would put a lot of pressure on his early levels, but kind of peter out as you got to level 3 and 4. But it was here where you got to make a decision to forgo MPPV entirely and gain 6 anger to hit level 4. Here, you'd be able to use whatever you played the first time in combat twice. So it was more of something that you wanted to kind of start a combat on. Often the strategy would be to enter combat on level 3 and proceed to instantly level to 4, lay down the beatdown with a powerful first attack like a static shot, PowerPoint, or maybe you were trying to play him in black at this time and doing things like Black Interceptor Barrage. He was fun and saw experimentation in all styles, but he mostly saw success in Red and Rage competitively, where he would go on to a second place finish at a later Oregon Regional. Nappa would be the second MP revealed. While no monster on the AT bracket, Nappa started the game with a physical attack that instantly destroyed a pesky ally. His level 2 experimented in a stage loss mechanic native to Saiyan, and his level 3 offered a very strong attack with some board removal that hit, while his level 4 gave you an insane +4 stage modifier. It could also make your attacks unpreventable if your opponent was at 0. Additionally, Nappa came with 2 name cards which punished an opponent for changing MP levels and offered board hate if they were at 0, something that most MPs did not have. He screamed to be played as a physical beats MP, even having a Vegeta ally printed in the set that specifically referenced and buffed him. Like Ten Shinhan, he was highly flavorful, something that fans like me appreciated. He would see some good competitive use in Black Devious and Blue Protective, though inevitably he would begin to fall off as the game's AT scaling progressed. Next to be revealed was Raditz. He offered an effect that rivaled, if not power crept, God Goku level 1, with the ability to select one of the top 2 cards of his life deck and put it into his hand. This was an effect so powerful that many opted to play decks that did not try to level off his level 1. As he went up his levels, he synergized highly with board cards, and his level 3 offered some really strong disruption when entering combat. It was a nice way to kind of get around visiting the past, or if you were an aggressive player, always guarantee your opponent was never sure about what they would draw. If you made it to his level 4 and could access critical damage effects, he let you tutor whatever setup or drill you wanted to from your life deck or discard pile. While this was a weaker effect by some metrics than his brother Goku, Raditz's versatility would age his stack quite well into the future. His name cards offered some strong synergy with black, and he helped make sure that you could avoid dead draws if your opponent was aggressive on you. Much like Nappa, he saw experimentation primarily in black at this time, but he would go on to have some really fun and strong niche decks throughout the game's lifespan. I myself played him quite a bit in Black Devious around this time, and one of my favorite decks of all time with him comes up in the next set. The final MP of Heroes and Villains was Nail. Nail was our third playable Namekian character, and had a lot to live up to when compared to Piccolo. Nail offered the ability to get a critical damage effect pretty consistently with his name card, Nail's Dashing Attack, with the ability for it to recycle itself, much like his block, Nail's Heritage, a double block. Nail's level 1 and 2 focused on punishing your opponent for blocking your attacks, even offering banishment if your opponent decided to use Endurance. If you got up to Nail's 3 and 4, you were most likely playing Dragon Balls. He had probably the best Dragon Ball manipulation on his upper levels than any MP in the game, with level 4 being a smoothest drill and a Namekian targeted strike combined into one. This level is absolutely insane, and it's such a cool level to look at. Unfortunately, Nail's level 1 and 2 not having anger kind of relegated him to mostly knowledge mastery if you actually want to see these levels, but people would experiment a little bit with them here and there. I do remember Black Devious Mastery being pretty popular with him, just because he had a life card attack on his level 1, and just putting more and more constant pressure for free, where Krillin and Piccolo could get stage locked. Nail didn't have to worry about that at all. He wasn't necessarily the strongest MP, but he was more of a niche and rogue pick. Nail didn't really see much play probably after this set, so I do want to highlight that he was a lot of fun and just really well loved by a lot of people. I specifically remember playing against him in North Kai, Knowledge Mastery of course, and I played a lot against Black Devious Nail. I know something that Kevin Dennis was quite fond of back in the day. My friend Derek also loved this deck, so I just wanted to shout it out that Nail was really cool. He's one of my favorite characters from this arc of the game, and I wish he could have seen a little bit more play, truthfully. I really think that if he got a little bit stronger and had some anger gain on these levels, he could have aged quite well. There were some really interesting cards that came out this set. To start, Knowledge decks started to splash more allies. with Krillin being a really popular answer to Orange Ginyu and Black Krillin decks. They also got another Dragon Ball manipulator in the form of Namekian Hurried Quest, and a strong new anger staple in the form of Namekian Shin Grab. Namekian Backhand would see some experimentation, but it kind of was relegated to the side for now. Saiyan was a massive winner this set. Cards like Saiyan Prep Ball and Grab come out this set for their respective alignments. We get staple cards like Spin Kick and Rescue coming into the format, Body Blow to tutor it, Saiyan Strength Test, a card with massive utility that goes totally underrated. It is just so crazy what Saiyan gets. On top of it, they get cards that are a little bit slower, like Saiyan Drive-By and Saiyan Intimidation, giving Saiyan some more options about how they want to play. Honestly, it was a really great time to be a Saiyan player, but it still isn't quite meta at this point. Blue got some pretty powerful drills in the form of Blue Lifting Drill and Blue Overpowering Drill. Lifting Drill all of a sudden gave blue decks better access to critical damage potential, and Blue Overpowering Drill powered up villains immensely. Frieza was the obvious pick, but unfortunately Frieza really wasn't competitive this set. The remaining blue cards were a mixture of gimmicks from ally to discard effects, with Blue Fear and Blue Leverage being the only ones of note to see some play. Red is definitely the winner here. I mean, if Saiyan got really crazy cards, Red got even crazier ones. Red Destiny builds upon Red Blazing Aura, so now Red decks just have this ability to potentially -5 everything. On top of the fact that it is a 2 anger card that sits on the table, Red all of a sudden has a lot more tempo and skin in the game. Red City Destruction really brings together that whole anger as a resource mechanic, but it also is an anger staple because it protects your anger on top of it. Speaking of anger as resource cards, we get 2 attached cards in the form of Red Stomach Dive and Red Club. Stomach Dive is really the only one that sees some real play, but they are options for how to play Red. Red Sacrifice and Red Restraint become staple for at least a bit here for Red Enraged. These cards offer some really explosive potential if you're able to discard them with a mastery. Red Knee Lift combos really well with Red City Destruction. This card is absolutely insane, getting 2 potential critical damage effects, or 3 if you have a Red Shoulder Gap going on. This card really solidifies Red as the king of crits. Red Leap sees really niche play, kind of only with Tien Shinhan, and that's about it. Red Combine Blast will see some niche play along with Embarrassing Drill, and Red Stop as the Red Drill pool increases. Black got a few cards of note. Black Upward Dodge, Black Foreshadowing, and Black Declaration all will go on to be staples for Black Krillin and other Black control decks going forward. Black Foreshadowing added on to Krillin's already unpreventable damage with the ability to just straight up destroy cards off your opponent's deck, bolstering an impressive 3 endurance. Black Upward Dodge, well, as I said, just added to the unpreventable damage Krillin and other MPs with attacks could do. A 4 life card on a disc all of a sudden made your disc threaten a 6 of somebody's life deck. Black Declaration would be very staple. It enabled Black Dragon Ball decks to exist. It let them loop Ball 2 and Ball 7, Ball 4, whatever they really needed, and it helped them get around Namekian Knowledge Mastery, so this card was pretty strong. The rest of the card pool for Black this set is a little odd. It's a mixture of big damage attacks, physical attacks, and then a couple of cards that synergize off banished effects. So there is some interesting ideas, but most of these are just that. Interesting. Finally, Orange. Orange, well, they just didn't really get much this set. The only card really worth talking about here is Orange Possession Drill. It enables Orange Krillin, which is really nice, and adds a lot of consistency to Orange decks. Most of these cards are based around some weird gimmicks about dropping your drills out of play, maybe bouncing them back into play. 2 really fun cards that come out of here are going to be Orange Torching Drill and Orange Crashing Drill. These mostly just see some really weird experimentation, never really are in any meta decks, but just something to be aware of. The non-styled cards of heroes and villains are probably the most meta-defining. Crushing Beam rewards heroes with a recurable attack, high endurance, and critical damage potential. Energetic Left Blast, Withering Fire, and Face Smash give more options for players that want board interaction, though some restrictions may apply. The ultra rares of the set, Heroic Assistance and Villainous Empowerment, follow the scheme of the first set, each having a alignment-based rare. Heroic Assistance works as a recursion tool that can set up some draws, and sees a lot of play in Knowledge Piccolo and Black Krillin decks. It also has some interesting synergy with cards like Orange Possession Drill and Piccolo Level 2. Villainous Empowerment, while it is designed to kind of combat all these board decks that are existing right now, it doesn't quite do enough, given that it's not an attack, and it doesn't replace itself. Alongside Villainous Empowerment is Isolation, another card looking to punish board state decks, but again, it doesn't quite have enough reach, it's a little too slow, and drills just aren't really meta quite yet. While he doesn't have a place in the competitive scene, something of note for the set is that Trunks gets a second name card, Trunks' Sword Stance. This card looks to play off his set 1 ability to look at the top cards of his deck, and if he names a card right when entering combat, he gets to advance an MP level. Combination Drill also comes out this set. It doesn't really see a ton of play, but it is an option for decks that are looking for some extra drill hate to splash. The allies of Heroes and Villains are quite interesting. They're much more utility-based than the first set's action-oriented ones. Krillin and Gohan ally look to give answers to anger and board state for heroes, while Piccolo ally gives a block on board for notably Gohan or anyone that can drain their stages. The villains, well, they get Frieza ally, which is a massive boost in power to Ginyu, pretty much solidifying him as the Namekian killer for quite a long time. Zarbon ally punishes physical decks that already had an uphill battle against Ginyu by rewarding him with anger. Dodoria is another option for Ginyu. Straight up captures are pretty rare in the game at this point. Not to be forgotten is the Ginyu ally himself, giving hand knowledge to any sort of deck that wants to run him. Wallbreaker is the epitome of silver bullet card design. Designed to combat the MPPV win condition, which had been dominant in the first set. Would this card neuter MPPV entirely? Was there enough interaction in the game to deal with Wallbreaker? Were there things that could have been done in the CRD instead of making this card? Wallbreaker would go on to become an instant competitive staple, with it shoring up many styles' weaknesses to MPPV. While it wasn't an instant game over for knowledge decks, which were able to play all three win conditions, the other styles suffered disproportionately. Red had the most native answers to Wallbreaker, however none of them were particularly reliable, reliant on landing attacks. Saiyan had Saiyan Energy Focus, which could blank out Wallbreaker for a turn, and one attack capable of dealing critical damage in the form of Saiyan Cheap Shot. Black had no direct answers, but you could banish them from the opponent's deck before they played them. The Devious Mastery modifier meant you dealt critical damage more often, and you had an interesting interaction with Black Delay. Orange at this time was not reliant on anger, but there were a number of ways through drills that meant you could deal critical damage a bit easier. Blue was barely managing to deal critical damage this set, and there were no cards in Blue that specifically targeted attached cards. Each MP had varying answers to the card. Krillin and Vegeta probably had the best answers in the form of their named attacks. Goku, Trunks, Tenshinhan, Vegeta, and Frieza would typically suffer even when able to build up modifiers on the board. Gohan felt even worse to play than ever, though you at least could maybe brute a force off a Wallbreaker easier than those other MPs I just mentioned. Nappa, Raditz, Nail, Krillin, and Ginyu most of the time did not mind being stuck on their level 1s. Rather, it was a benefit. Piccolo ideally wanted to be on his second level when he was hit with a Wallbreaker, that level being a win condition of itself at the time, but again, in knowledge variants, he had the ability to win by all three win conditions, so he could be built with Wallbreaker in mind. Focused Assault was originally meant to be a black-only card, though it was changed late in set production to become a non-stealth card accessible to heroes. Being a respectable 7 life card attack if you hit an attached card in play, and having 2 endurance, it was a pretty decent card on its own at the time. But it became absolutely stable for anger decks, and even non-anger decks that were looking for utility. Villains will have to wait, because the best anger decks in the format are going to also get the best answers. But how would the inclusion of Wallbreaker shape up the metagame? Will Saiyan and Red get their chance to shine this set? Will the new MPs carve out their own roles to play? With OP Season on the horizon, how will Heroes and Villains shape the history of Panini's Dragon Ball Z card game? My name is Frank DeLuca. I had played the score game very casually during its run in the years of 2003 through 2006. I never played in any tournaments, and I never had a lot of cards. I rediscovered the game in 2012 under the retro virtual format, and followed the 2014 Panini game until its cancellation in 2017. I've continued to play the fan-run successor, FanZ, ever since then. I created the series, A Player's History of Panini's Dragon Ball Z card game, as a love letter documenting the game from the perspective of those that played it. My story and others will be interwoven to create a narrative that I hope you find entertaining and informative as I examine the game from its pre-release through cancellation. It is with the help of the community and the passion that they have had for decades that allows us to continue playing this remarkable, frustrating, and wonderful game. This is A Player's History of Panini's Dragon Ball Z card game. And Heroes and Villains is out. What a time. It was like 5-6 months between the release of Premiere until the release of Heroes and Villains. And damn, was the game getting incredibly stale, only for Wallbreaker to drop, which ends up becoming kind of a game ender for some people. We'll get into that as we play some games and we talk about the set. And we swing into the OP Season 1. The new MPs come out, all really interesting, all have some like interesting kind of gimmicks going for them and reasons why you would play them. Do they see play? We can analyze that once we get to the OP season results and top cut results of some of these bigger tournaments that I can find, and any stories that people have and what people want to play. I know a lot of people had a lot of interest in Ten Shinhan. That was somebody that I played like religiously for the set. And then of course a lot of people really loved Black Raditz. That was always like a really strong rogue contender deck. There are a couple of other decks that open up that I mentioned, like Blue Krillin, Orange Krillin, that become really popular with the Heroes and Villains, and then into the next set. I've been a little sick lately, so it's been taking me a little longer to work on everything here, but I've had a lot of fun working on this all. I really look forward to getting some matches in with Heroes and Villains. I actually think that it's not as bad of a set as I remember it being. I got to play in 2 events, like larger events for OP Season 1, and one of them was in the Heroes and Villains meta, and the other one was in the next set movie collection, which it's a little down the horizon here for us. There's a lot to cover here. Of course, I'd love to hear anybody's stories about OP Season 1 as we go through it, so if you have anything that you'd like to tell me about, any personal stories and things, I would love to kind of incorporate that into this series, especially if you're a player. I am always looking for volunteers to play here. Hit me up on my email. I'll link that up for anyone that is there, or if you're in YouTube here, you can always just put a little comment that you are interested and we can get in touch with each other. I would really appreciate it all. I love all the support that everyone has given me here, and I hope you've been enjoying this. It's been a lot of fun to go back. I even got to started to play some games for the next episode here with some people from the past. That has been a lot of fun here. So again, thank you for everyone that's put their time into play with me so far, has tuned in. I'm looking forward to doing this all, and everyone, take it easy. Peace.